Episode 2 already, back to back. It's a launch day celebration. This is part 2 of my first impressions review of the Nintendo Switch 2. And in the previous episode, I talked about a whole bunch of stuff, including the packaging, both from the perspective of a collector, but also from the perspective of giving as a gift, how it might feel as a small child unwrapping the Switch 2 for the first time and opening the packaging. We covered what's in the box itself, all the accessories and the paperwork or lack of it, and my first impressions of the console, the tablet itself, the build quality, the physical appearance. But of course, there's only so much that you can cover when you're talking about a tablet. The Switch and the Switch 2, by extension, really become more interesting once you take in the whole switchness of it, the switching between handheld mode, docked mode, and tabletop mode. We covered that a little bit in the last episode, but what we really need to dive into right now is part 2 of my first impressions. We're going to cover first impressions of the Joycons, first impressions of using in handheld mode, first impressions of the dock, switching between handheld and dock modes, switching on the system for the first time seeing the screen, the user interface, and basically comparing and contrasting all the way along the way with the Switch 1, the Switch OLED, maybe the Switch Lite, even competitors or similar products like the Steam Deck and the Neo. Okay, so let me just quickly read the podcast intro and then we can jump right back into it. Hi everyone, welcome to Daily Switch 2, a podcast covering everything related to the Nintendo Switch 2, with at least one episode uploaded per day to YouTube, Spotify, and your favorite major platforms. My name is Sam, and I've been a gamer since the 1980s. I've worked in the entertainment industry since I was a teenager, including as a games journalist, producer of gaming documentaries and shows, and I'm even programming multiple indie video games, including 4, which will be released on the Switch and hopefully the Switch 2. So be sure to subscribe and follow the show for the world-exclusive news on those as they drop. However, I'm a gamer and Nintendo fan at heart, and this podcast is purely a passion project for me to talk about the stuff that interests and excites me about this new system. It's not monetized or funded by any entity. It's completely unofficial and unbiased so that I can give my full, frank, honest opinion. So if you want to support me or just find out the best places to get these free daily episodes, all links are in the bio at linktree/dailyswitch2. That's linktr.ee/dailyswitch2. Thank you so much, and back to the episode. Okay, so now getting into the real switchness of the Switch 2, we need to look at the Joycons, because obviously the Joycons added to the tablet equals the Switch 2 in handheld mode, and I imagine that's how many people are going to use it. I know for many people the Switch 1 has been a handheld only experience. For me, I tend to use the Switch Lite as my handheld system, but also the Joycons can obviously be used with the Joycon Grip as well when you're playing in docked. So let's look at the Joycons first. Here is my first impressions. Of course, the Joycons, 2 Joycons are included in the box, the left and right Joycon, and like with the Switch 1, the left and right Joycon are not the same. You can't put the right on the left-hand side and the left on the right-hand side. They are noticeably different. It's an asymmetric design. Same as with the original Switch, but I suppose if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Although many people would argue that the original Joy-Cons were broke, so have Nintendo fixed them? Well, yes and no. They're an improvement. They're a definite improvement. And I tell you what is the biggest improvement for me is how the Joy-Cons attach to the console itself. Absolutely huge improvement. Rather than sliding on with the rails, they now, as I'm sure you know, connect with magnets. Now, I was initially kind of skeptical about that because to me, that sounds less secure. It sounds like there's a chance that they'll come loose or they'll fall, or if you flex too much they'll disconnect. But it's quite a clever design. Of course, with the Joy-Cons actually go inside the left and right side of the Switch slightly. It's like a little ridge. They connect almost like kind of Lego bricks going into each other, and then once they're in there, magnets hold them in place. I don't know if it's an electromagnet. I don't think it is. I think it's just a strong magnet. I don't think they're electromagnets using up any battery power. And it's quite satisfying when you connect them. I was concerned that maybe it will be a bit finicky or awkward. You'll have to get it at just exactly the right angle, or it'll be possible to put them in wrong. But no, it goes in very easily, very smoothly. Again, family-friendly podcast. Goes in very, very, very smoothly, very easily, and it gives a real kind of satisfying kind of no, maybe that wasn't the right noise. It'd been more like a click when they attach. I was initially worried because there's a little kind of sticky out connector inside the Nintendo Switch on either side. And again, I thought, well, if it goes at a slight angle, maybe that's a point of weakness. Maybe it'll break. But actually, it looks like it's slightly tapered, and they've thought of that. I don't think it's going to be a problem. Fingers crossed. We hope that there's not going to be any problems with that, but I don't foresee it, because just holding it feels and it looks a lot more solid than I initially thought. Now, the one reservation I have about the magnets attaching. Sorry, my cat has just jumped up onto my lap. Hello, baby. But the one reservation I have is, obviously these are not permanently fixed to the console, and the magnets are just holding them in place. Yes, they are strong magnets, but my advice to you, à mon avis, as my French friends would say, do not hold it by just one Joy-Con and then swing it around at angles and expect the Switch to stay together. Perhaps I can imagine you're holding the Switch in two hands, and then someone comes in and offers you a beer or a pizza or whatever, and you carry on holding it with your left hand, and you're holding the left Joy-Con, and you let go with your right hand to grab the pizza or the beer or whatever. And maybe if you were unlucky with the angles, it would be possible that the Switch would disconnect from the Joy-Con and fall off. That remains to be seen how likely that is to happen, but it's certainly, your mileage may vary. It's certainly not something that I would recommend doing. If you're holding it in one hand, I'd hold it by the tablet rather than just one Joy-Con, because these yes, there is a button to disconnect the Joy-Cons, but they will disconnect without that button being pressed. I think if there was enough weight, the magnets aren't that strong. But it is a lot better than the rail system. It looks a lot better. It feels a lot more secure. I'm not a Switch hater by any standards, as you can tell. I've been a big Nintendo fan for many, many years. As I said, I've owned every Nintendo console, and for first-party games, I'm primarily a Nintendo gamer. I tend to prefer the Nintendo exclusives over the Sony or the Microsoft exclusives. And also, I love indie games, and predominantly, I like to play them on the Switch. But the Switch one, there was always some issues with it. There was things about the Switch one which I wasn't keen on, and one of the things that I really, really did not like the first time that I picked up the Switch one back in the day. I remember I was at a promotional event in Disneyland Paris when I first held a Nintendo Switch one, and my first thought was, ooh, I don't like the way that these Joy-Cons connect to the tablet. They feel flimsy. They feel like they're not fully connected. Like as you're playing, there's a bit of flex. It feels like you can move it. It very much, the tablet did not feel fully 100% connected to the Joy-Cons. It felt like a tablet with some cheap controllers kind of sticky taped on the side. And it didn't feel part of a cohesive console, in inverted commas, altogether in one design. It felt like a first draft. And the Nintendo Switch 2 is definitely the improved version, and the once the Joy-Cons are connected, because they actually go inside the sides and they connect more securely, and they don't have that flex, they don't have that wobble while it's connected. They really do feel. It really does feel like a cohesive, coherent unit altogether, and it's great. This is one thing. Again, as I mentioned, I am neurodiverse, and so perhaps this bothers me more than it would bother some other people, but it actually, the feeling of the Joy-Cons connected to the Switch actually bothered me significantly much, that I tend to only use my Switch in docked mode, connected to the TV, and for portable play, if I know that I'm going to be playing for extended periods of time in portable mode, I actually use the Switch Lite. I know perhaps that's a controversial opinion, but I actually really like the Switch Lite. It's a really nice feeling, comfortable, high quality unit, and it's one solid unit that feels like it was designed to be permanently used in handheld mode. Of course, it doesn't dock. It can't be used on the TV. That's the only problem with it. But as a handheld device, I think the Nintendo Switch Lite is an absolutely lovely little unit. So that's always bothered me, the fact that I felt almost forced to own two Switches at any one point, one to use as a home console and one to use as a portable system, whereas I can actually imagine me using the switching gimmick, or function of the Switch 2, and actually using it in both docked and handheld mode, and regularly switching between the two. So that's a very big thumbs up to Nintendo for the way these Joy-Cons connect and how solid the unit feels when it's all together. Also, I really like the look. With the original Nintendo Switch, when it came out, there were kind of two main SKUs that you could get. Either one with kind of two matching black or dark gray Joy-Cons, which matched, but it didn't really have any color. It didn't look very interesting. Or you had the kind of neonish red and blue, the iconic kind of dual Switch colors, with the one Joy-Con in blue and the other Joy-Con in the kind of reddy, orangey neon red. Yeah, obviously that was the cooler option, or the more kind of, well, maybe not cooler, but more kind of interesting option. And as I mentioned before, I like colorful, I like creative, I like the kind of bright, fun Nintendo side of things. I was always a purple GameCube person rather than a black or silver GameCube person. The silver one's kind of cool, but I was always a purple GameCube person myself, and I liked collecting the Game Boys and the Switch, the Game Boys and the DSs, and in different fun colors. And I love the Super Famicom and the European version of the Super Nintendo, where it had multicolored buttons. Sometimes people say they look like Skittles or M&Ms or whatever, but I really like a little flash of color. But for me, with the original Nintendo Switch one, having the Joy-Cons in non-matching colors, it almost felt a shame. Because when you're looking at the system, especially a handheld system, so you're staring at it all the time when you're playing in handheld mode, it was always kind of in my periphery that the colors didn't match. And again, being kind of neurodiverse, I had to just keep reminding myself, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Don't let it bother you that it doesn't match, you know? And of course, if you had the dark grey version, then it did match, and it did look a bit kind of sleeker and cooler, but it also looked more boring and more kind of sanitized. But with the Nintendo Switch 2, we've, in my mind at least, we've fixed that problem, because the Joy-Cons that come in the box are the kind of matching kind of dark grey that match the tablet, so it looks all together. But you have, as I'm sure you guys have seen, a ring around the analog stick on the left and a ring around the analog stick on the right, and it's the rings that are in the kind of iconic red and blue colors. They're just like little splashes of color, and to me that looks a lot cleaner, a lot neater, a lot more classy, but it still has that kind of colorful fun vibe. It's funny, there's actually various kind of Chinese systems that play like emulators and stuff like that, which adopted that kind of design of having a ring of color around the inside of the analog stick housing. And so it's funny to see Nintendo actually adapting it in an official console, because it's usually these Chinese systems which are kind of ripping off the design, or at least heavily leaning into the design of classic Nintendo consoles and Nintendo design aesthetics. But so it's interesting to see that. But I really like the way the new analog sticks look with the rings of color around them. So yeah, the aesthetics of the Joy-Con, especially once attached to the unit, they look a lot better, and the unit itself looks really sleek. And when the Joy-Cons are attached, I'd honestly say it no longer looks like just a tablet. It actually does look like a portable console. Now, you can argue, is it as unique and Nintendo-ish as previous consoles? Probably not. It does look very similar to like the portable PCs and the Steam Decks and the Aya Neos and those kind of things. But that's not a bad thing. And I think that little splash of color, it does have the kind of fun Nintendo-ish aesthetic hidden under that kind of modern cool aesthetic as well. One thing that perhaps you don't notice when you just look at the system, because everything's in proportion, but when you're holding it, especially if you're used to holding a Switch or a Switch OLED, you notice the buttons and the sticks are a lot bigger than the Switch one, and of course that's going to be a good thing. It's a lot more comfortable. Again, I didn't find the original Switch one particularly comfortable in my hands, and I was not a big fan of the original Joy-Cons. I often ended up replacing them with unofficial but bigger, more comfortable, more grippy Joy-Cons, like the solutions from Hori and companies like that. Whereas I can actually see me using these Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Cons attached to the Nintendo Switch 2. Hey, so the Joy-Cons built into the system or included with the system, I'm not going to feel like I instantly have to buy something else to replace them with something better. I actually think they look really nice, they feel really nice, and they feel really comfortable. So this is not a review immediately right now talking about the performance of the Joy-Cons or the tech of the Joy-Cons. I'll get onto that later. This is literally just a first impressions of opening the system and holding it in your hands, and what does it look like? What does it feel like? But I think, like many people, one of the first things that you do when you hold a system like this in your hand, or you hold a new joypad in your hand, showing my age there, saying joypad, a new controller in your hand, is you put your thumbs on the analog sticks and you roll them around to see how they feel. And it's difficult to describe, but the analog sticks feel really nice. They are noticeably smoother than the Switch 1 analog sticks, and I'm struggling to describe it because it's not like the Switch One analog sticks were sticky or not smooth in any way. But yeah, no, maybe there's slightly less resistance. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But they certainly don't feel loose. They feel tight and responsive. They return to center really nicely. But yeah, they just feel really pleasant to spin around, and I'm sure many people do the same thing as me, is like, you're fiddling with them almost like a fidget toy when you're waiting for something to load or whatever, or waiting for an update to download, but we'll get on to that. You kind of flick the Joy-Cons, and you flick the analog sticks, or you spin them around in circles and concentric and clockwise, counterclockwise. You fiddle with them, you click them. Yeah, these are nice looking and feeling analog sticks, and the buttons themselves as well, the face buttons. Yeah, they were already really good, as they always are on Nintendo systems with the Switch One, but here they are bigger. They're slightly more comfortable, and I think the positioning of them, yeah, it feels right. It feels natural when you're playing. So absolutely no complaints here. Now, a bit more awkward is also included in the box, as well as the Joy-Cons, is you have the I'm not entirely sure what they're called, the Joy-Con kind of straps or kind of shoulders that go on. So when you take the Joy-Cons off of the system and you're using the Joy-Cons separately to play, they always showed, oh, here's a really cool idea. You can take off the Joy-Cons and now you've got two controllers. You can put them on the side and you can hold them like an NES controller. And look, they've got shoulder buttons where they used to attach. And for me, it's a really cool idea, but for me, that always felt kind of gimmicky. I always felt, oh, that doesn't look very comfortable. That doesn't look like something that I'm going to want to use for regular play, maybe in a pinch for a quick multiplayer session that you weren't expecting. But in general, my first thought was, okay, I'm going to have to buy a Pro controller because there's no way that I'm going to want to play with the Joy-Con on its side like that. But the Joy-Con 2, it is bigger, and it is more comfortable to take out and hold onto the side. I do think they've made a vast improvement with the L&R shoulder buttons when you're using them on the side. They are bigger, and more easy to reach, and the Joy-Cons themselves being slightly larger makes them a bit more comfortable to play with in your hand. You still have the strange thing of the right Joy-Con having the analog stick kind of at such an angle so that it ends up, if you're playing with it sideways separate, you end up with the analog stick being in the middle rather than on the left of the controller. I've never liked that. It's awkward, but again, this is just part of the kind of design of, oh yeah, the controllers can be detached, and you can use the two Joy-Cons as two separate controllers for multi. But yeah, you can. I wouldn't necessarily want to, but I would be more inclined to do so with the Switch 2 than with the Switch 1. So it's not perfect, but it's an improvement. But what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to attach these kind of little plasticky rails and stuff to the top to make them a more kind of neat, all-in-one smooth shape, and to make the shoulder buttons easier to reach. And of course, they have the wrist straps attached as well, because everybody remembers the days of the Wii, where people were breaking TVs supposedly by throwing their Wii remote at the TV while they were bowling. Grip strength be damned, I suppose. But yeah, the rails, I'm going to call them rails. I know they're not rails. I don't know what the name is, but the rails, do I like them? They're better than the Nintendo Switch 1 versions. They're significantly better, but it just feels a bit awkward to me, because suddenly you've gone from this portable system that all fits together as one unit, but you've got to carry these little rails separately. There's no way for them to, I don't know, maybe they could have slid inside the Switch 2. There could have been like a little department on the back, like a kind of battery container, but in the old days. But then they slide inside. I don't know, man. That would be awkward as heck, and it would make them bigger. But 90, let's be real, 99.9% of people who are carrying their Switch around are gonna forget to carry these little rails around, or if they do carry them around, they're likely to get lost. And also they feel a little bit flimsy. There's a bit of flex to them. They're a kind of elongated O shape, so that there's a hole in between either side, so you can kind of squeeze them, and they don't feel 100% solid when they're not attached. Once they're attached, they're great, and they actually make the Joy-Cons much more comfortable to be holding when they're attached. But honestly, man, let me know in the comments. Do you regularly use the Joy-Cons while they are detached and do two-player with two Joy-Cons? Or do you prefer to use Pro controllers or other solutions like that? I don't know. For me, I'm a Pro controller guy. But so these rails, yes, they exist. Yes, they're included. I think it's cool that they're colored. It's kind of nice. And they definitely make the Joy-Cons feel nicer and look nicer when they're attached. But it's just the fact that you've got this extra bit of plastic to carry around with you, and they don't actually really perform very much function. It's just to make it slightly more comfortable. They're not strictly necessary, so I think people aren't really going to use them. But they are included, and they're slightly better than the version that came with the Switch one. So, okay, there we go. Okay, this is Editing Sam from the future. Sorry to interrupt your regularly scheduled program. It occurred to me while I was editing this podcast and listening back that I should have mentioned that the straps are presumably going to be a lot more useful when using the Joy-Cons separated in mouse mode. And also I should have mentioned mouse mode when I'm talking about how I don't tend to like using the Joy-Cons separated from the system. If mouse mode turns out to be a really cool new feature that's used in many games that I want to play, then perhaps these straps will be more useful than I initially imagined. However, personally, I'm a little skeptical. I think the idea of mouse mode is cool, but it doesn't look the most comfortable to me. But what do you guys think? Does mouse mode look cool and exciting to you, or do you think we'll just get a load of kind of PC ports and that's about it? For me, I'm not sure, but if anybody can use them in a really interesting way, then it's Nintendo. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled podcast and Sam from the past. Take it away, Sam. Next thing to talk about, I suppose, is the dock. And again, I've got some mixed feelings here. The dock is very similar to the dock with the Nintendo Switch one. I believe it's more substantial as far as the tech and what comes inside it. It's got more connections, and it's also got fans to keep the system cool and help with the extra kind of upgrades that you get when you're using the system docked. Obviously, it tends to play games tend to play at a higher resolution when docked, and sometimes a higher frame rate, I believe, as well. And you can use various functions. Specifically, one function that is very useful for a lot of people, I suppose, will be Ethernet connection, because we did have that with the OLED Switch as well. The dock is the dock, man. The first time I looked at it, I was like, oh, okay, so it's basically exactly the same as the Switch 1 dock. But when I picked it up and I started looking at it, no, it's quite significantly different once you look at the back. I think in some ways it's a better, more finished, complete design. Before, the Switch 1 dock just felt like a random kind of bit of plastic to me, and certainly if you bought it separately, I felt it was very overpriced because there wasn't really very much tech included in the dock, and really the dock itself could have been much smaller. It could have just been, a random kind of cable or dongle that plugged into the bottom of the Switch, but then that would have ruined the illusion of no, it's not a portable system which connects to the TV. It is a system which connects to the TV, and once it's in the dock, this is a system that you've plugged into the TV, like your PS4 or like your Xbox. So I felt the dock with the Switch on was almost kind of a bit of a missed opportunity. It could have been designed better. This Switch 2 version is designed better in many ways. But the one kind of negative thing that I noticed is it does have a bit of flex to it. It doesn't feel 100% solid. You can certainly kind of squeeze it in the front and back. They have some flex to it. Is that a big problem? No, I don't think it's likely to break anytime soon unless you're, really gripping it very, very hard. And I don't see why you'd do that. And the one big issue that there was with the original Switch 1 dock at launch was it was so tight when the Switch was inserted into the dock that people were worried that it was going to be scratching the screen, and especially if you added something like a third-party screen protector, it was a very tight fit indeed, or some people found that it didn't fit at all with slightly thicker tempered glass screen protectors. That's not going to be an issue here, I believe, because you actually do have a lot more kind of space, and the Switch 2 just slides into the Switch 2 dock very, very easily. So that's a good thing, I suppose. But the downside is when it's in there, it doesn't feel 100% secure. The Switch 2 can rattle around slightly. If you kind of pick it up, you can feel it. You can feel it wobble, just maybe 2-3 millimeters. But the fact that there is that travel and it moves, it just feels slightly less secure, and that does make it feel slightly less satisfying when you place the Switch 2 into the Switch 2 dock. It doesn't feel quite as satisfying as when you first placed the Switch 1 or the Switch OLED into their respective docks, just because it doesn't fit quite so neatly, quite so like a glove. It's just perfect. It goes inside, it fits perfectly. No, the dock, I think by design the dock is slightly bigger than it needs to be to allow the Switch to go in more easily, but also it just, like I said, it doesn't feel like it's kind of holding it quite as securely. Again, I don't really think that's a big problem, but I'm sure for some people it will bother them, especially if they're putting it in and out regularly. Ooh, misses. The other thing that I noticed is kind of there's a flap at the back that you can connect and disconnect and to reach the various ports. And of course, that's not something that you're going to be doing regularly, but I don't know. It felt a bit cheap and a bit flimsy when I was connecting and disconnecting it. It for me, it would have felt more like a premium kind of high quality product if it had either some kind of more elaborate hinge, maybe with some kind of smooth dampening on there, or if it attached magnetically, like the Joycons. That would have been really cool. But no, it's just a standard kind of plasticky clip in place, and when it comes off, it's very obvious that the plastic is kind of thin. It's high quality plastic, but it's just, the dock doesn't feel substantial and thick and high quality and like a premium product. And if the Nintendo Switch 2 was not the price that it is, and we'll get onto the price at a later point in this review, but if it was a much cheaper system, it wouldn't be a problem. This is very much a nitpick, but for me, the dock does not feel as high quality and premium a product as the Switch itself and the Joy-Cons. However, it is more functional than the dock for the Switch 1 and the Switch OLED, it is better designed in many ways. The tech is better inside it, and yeah, it's not really a problem. It's not really a problem. I'm nitpicking here, and I do, as I said, I do feel that for me personally, with the Switch One and the Switch OLED, I don't really go in and out of docked mode and handheld mode very often, because I just prefer to leave it docked all the time and use the Switch Lite for handheld. Whereas with the Switch 2, I can imagine going in and out of docked and handheld like every day. And I love how the Switch 2 looks and feels when it's in handheld mode, and when it's docked, yeah, it looks fine, and it's going to be nice and easy putting it in and out of that slightly loose dock every day, and I'm sure it will function just exactly how you'd want it to. If it doesn't, then we've got a problem. But we'll get to the actual testing and the hardware specs later on in the review. So we are now nearly at the end of the contents of the box. As far as I can think, there's only one extra thing that's left inside the box, and that is the Joycon Grip, or the puppy grip, as many people, myself included, like to call it, because people's first thought when they saw the grip for the Switch One was that when it had the Joy-Cons attached, it looked a bit like a puppy dog with the handles resembling ears and the analog sticks resembling eyes. Yeah, it's I don't use the Joy-Con grip on the Switch One. It's a neat idea, but frankly, I didn't like the Joy-Cons very much. I didn't like the feel of using them, so as soon as I knew that there was a premium option of, if I'm playing on the TV, I can have a premium option of a Pro controller, I just instantly went, well, that's going to be the option for me then. Okay, I'm going to have to pay extra for a Pro controller. Not convinced by the Joy-Con grip, but it is a neat idea, and if you don't want to pay extra for a Pro controller, and who could blame you, because the prices have been going through the roof, and this system is not cheap, so, and in this economy, yeah, if you want to play on the TV, attaching your Joy-Cons to the Joy-Con grip, I actually think this is going to be a lot more viable this time around, simply because the Joy-Con 2 are bigger, better quality. They feel more substantial in the hands. The sticks are better? Question mark. We'll get onto that. But the sticks, they certainly feel better. They're more comfortable. They're more ergonomic, and the buttons feel better. So actually, yeah, I can imagine playing with the Joy-Cons attached to the new Joy-Con grip, and using that instead of a Pro controller. I can imagine, although it's not ideal, I can imagine that it would be perfectly comfortable, and I'd be a lot more likely to, maybe it wouldn't be my first choice, but I'd be a lot more likely to be able to play it without being constantly distracted by how terrible it felt. The Joy-Con grip itself, is it different to the Joy-Con Grip 1? I don't know. I mean, it's got a massive great 2 in the front, of the Switch 2 logo. It feels a bit, I don't know, man. I'm not sure about the number 2 being so large and so prominent on it, but I mean, it's discreet because it's in black, just like the rest, or whatever color, whether it's black or dark gray, whatever color the rest of the grip is. It's not it's not in neon colors like shining out going two, but yeah, it just looks like the Joy-Con Grip 1, but with a blooming great 2 on it. But the difference, of course, is with the Switch 2 Joy-Cons attached to it, it's a lot more substantial a controller than with the Switch 1 Joy-Cons attached to their respective Joy-Con grip. And of course, the magnetic connection is a huge improvement. As I say, it just feels more substantial. Is the Joycon Grip with the Joy-Cons attached going to replace a Pro Controller? For me, no. But if you can't afford a Pro Controller right now, or if it genuinely doesn't bother you and you try it out first and you're perfectly happy with it, I can imagine this has now become a real solution. Whereas for me, with the Switch 1, it was a case of, oh, that's a neat idea. It's something that looked cool in the trailer, and it allowed you to say, oh, and we have this extra functionality, but I'm literally never going to do that. I think maybe I tried it once or twice and then just put it back in the box, and I've never looked at the Joy-Con Grip again. So do I like the Joy-Con Grip too? Like is a strong word, but it certainly is an improvement. If there's one thing that I actually strongly dislike, and again, this would have been such a easy win for Nintendo to have added this functionality to make it feel more of a premium product, but they, for whatever reason, in their infinite wisdom, they decided not to. It's not a charging grip. There is no functionality to be able to plug in a USB-C or whatever cable to charge your Joy-Cons while they're attached to the grip. It's literally just a lump of plastic, which is a real shame, because if you're going to use it as a replacement for a Pro Controller, of course, a Pro Controller you can charge whenever you want. They're wireless, so you have to use them on battery. They don't just plug in like the old SNES joypads or whatever that would just plug it straight into the system. And battery life can be an issue for wireless controllers, of course, as we all know. And it's very nice to have the option to be able to plug in your controller to charge, especially if you can continue to use the controllers while they're plugged in, like you can with Xbox systems and things like that. That's not going to be an option here, because the Joy-Con Grip is literally just a piece of plastic to join the two Joy-Con controllers together and have a handle on either side. So it's a real shame, because honestly, how much more expensive, especially once they've added the kind of magnetic mechanism for attaching the Joy-Cons to it, how much more expensive would it have been to add a USB cable and a little charging circuit in there? I mean, I'm sure you could go on AliExpress and buy yourself a charging circuit and actually modify your Joy-Con Grip with a Dremel for maybe $2 or $3. It really, I don't know, man. It would have been really good for Nintendo to have the foresight to do that and just have it feel like a more premium solution. Again, I keep coming back to it, but for this price point, the Joy-Con Grip, just like the dock, it doesn't feel quite as premium and sleek and well designed as it could have been. Unlike the tablet and the Joy-Cons themselves. I'm very happy with the tablet and the Joy-Cons themselves. I think they're really good. So that was everything that's inside the box. As I say, nothing else included. It's a shame. Back in the day, we would have had posters and a catalog and a proper manual and maybe stickers, and if you got it on launch day, maybe something like a badge or something, or a patch for your clothes to say you got it on launch day. And I know it's a gimmick, but for me, stuff like that, it actually, as a fan, it actually means something. And especially thinking back to being a child unwrapping this. I mean, I'm as I said, I've been a gamer since the 80s, so it's no secret I'm in my 40s now, and so. Should I really care about having that feeling of being a small child opening your present on Christmas or birthday? No, it's more, this is a lifestyle product. So I'm comparing it in my head. I'm comparing the experience to unboxing the latest iPad or iPhone or a Samsung, a high-end Samsung phone. The first time it's about the experience, isn't it? Or the first time you unpackage your laptop for the first time. There's something to be said for the kind of premium experience. And on the one hand, Nintendo have nailed this with the look and the feel of the packaging, but on the other hand, there's not very much included inside. It's bare bones, isn't it? It would have been again, it would not have cost very much just to include a poster, a little certificate of authenticity, something like that, a sticker, a patch, maybe even a enamel pin badge or something like that, would have cost maybe €1. Sorry, I'm European. $1 just to include that extra, but it would have given that feeling of being more premium. And again, this is something weirdly that a lot of the kind of Chinese manufacturers of emulation systems and things, which really a lot of people do use those as alternatives to a Switch or whatever, because it's a portable system that can play many infinite amount of games. So people are going to compare. But overall, yeah, the first impressions are really nice. And the unboxing is great, and the box is going to look nice on the shelf, and it's going to last well. It's going to last well in storage. So for the resale value of the box and the packaging is not going to easily degrade over time. So yeah, I'm overall happy with the experience. So the next thing to talk about, I guess, for the first impressions, before we move on to, maybe more important stuff like the actual games and the controls and the hardware specs. But when we're talking about first impressions, obviously the next thing that you do really is you turn on the system. And it's quite likely that when you get your system, especially if you're buying it on the launch period, it's quite likely that you're going to actually have some charge in the battery. It will probably say, plug it in for so many hours before you turn it on for the first time and everything. But who's going to do that? You've just opened your console. You're excited. You want to turn it on. You want to see if it works. And turning it on, obviously you're excited to turn it on. And my first impression was, okay, this screen is nice. It's bright. It looks decent. Obviously, it's 1080p versus 720p, which is a discussion we can get into in the hardware specs. It's not an OLED screen, but it is HDR10. The major advantage in OLED, organic light emitting diode, is the blacks and the contrasts because of that, because each pixel is individually lit up. So if you have an area that is completely black, rather than being lit up and displaying the color of black in inverted commas, it's literally just those pixels are not turned on at all, so they are a solid black. So this really helps with the contrast ratio on OLED screens. However, this is not a Switch OLED. They've perhaps controversially chosen to not go with an OLED version for the Switch 2, potentially so that they can do a hardware refresh down the line, or a more expensive or a Pro version with an OLED screen included. There are pros and cons to OLED screens, and maybe we'll talk about that when we're talking about the hardware specs. But the reason why I mention it here for the first impressions is, despite this not being an OLED screen, it does have a very nice contrast ratio. The first thing that you'll see is essentially black text on a white screen. The contrast ratio looks really, really nice. And I'm sure that the HDR10 high dynamic resolution is that what it stands for? HDR? I don't know. But it's going to have a high contrast between colors. And certainly your first impressions, the black looks black, the white looks white. It's, as I said, mixed feelings about the resolution. We'll get onto that later. But the other thing that was a slight disappointment to me after turning it on was the size of the screen compared to the bezel or bezel around the outside of the screen. Of course, with kind of modern high-end mobile phones, over time the bezels have got smaller and smaller and smaller, and the ideal is to have 100% of the visible slab of glass that you're looking at be the screen, and not have a big black border around the outside that isn't screen. And one of the things that makes a mobile phone look either cheap or makes it look like an older model is when you see a larger bezel. And of course, the Switch OLED had a significantly smaller bezel than the Switch One, and it really does make a very large aesthetic difference. Even if you don't care about the screen being larger and you have good eyesight and it doesn't matter to you how big the screen is, having that smaller bezel, it really does make it feel like a more kind of premium product. And the bigger the bezel is, the more it kind of feels like a cheap tablet, or like a children's device that needs lots of protection. Like a lot of people said the Wii U gamepad looked and felt like a Fisher-Price kid's first tablet. And I'm one of the people who actually really loved the Wii U, and I will go to bat for the Wii U. I'll stand up for it. It's one of my favorite consoles. I had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, I'll admit I didn't really like looking down at that screen and having the enormous bezel around it. Obviously, the Switch 2 bezel is nowhere near as bad as that. It's roughly equivalent to the OLED bezel. It's I haven't directly compared side to side. It certainly doesn't appear worse. But because the appearance when you're looking at it switched off in as I say Black Mirror mode is glass all the way to the edge, or nearly all the way to the edge. I was kind of in my head. I was kind of hoping that the screen was going to extend out until where the glass meets the plastic, and just have the very small bezel being the plastic area surrounding the glass. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Maybe in the future that will be what we get with a hardware refresh, and if we do, I'll be very happy. So the first time the screen turned on, my first thing was, oh, it's a shame the screen doesn't extend out further to the edges, because that would just look and feel a lot more premium. But once I'd got over that disappointment, my second impression, like almost immediately, was, oh, but it is a really nice screen. It's very bright. The contrast ratio is fantastic. The experience of first turning it on, though, again, coming from the perspective of imagining that you're, a child opening your present for the first time on Christmas morning, it's not very exciting to be greeted with a white screen with black writing. And although the onboarding process is perfectly smooth and perfectly functional, it's kind of plain. It doesn't have that Nintendo charm that their systems and UI did back in the day. I think a lot of people yearn for the days of like the Wii interface, and they just and the DS and the Wii U. They felt a lot more kind of fun and charming and original than the Switch and this new Switch 2 kind of UI. And I agree with that personally, but I can see how Nintendo wants to move away from that kind of, they want to stay, oh, we are the family-friendly company, but we want to move away from the image of we are a company that just makes children's games or that just makes family games. No, we want to be the company for everybody, including the hardcore gamers. And, so therefore we can't have anything that looks too bright and colorful and fun and cheerful and whimsical. We've got to make everything plain and sterile. And there's nothing wrong with the onboarding process. It's just not particularly interesting and exciting. I did notice there isn't really much music, but I did notice some kind of fun sound effects here or there, so at least that's a slight improvement to the Switch one. And the big improvement is it is a lot faster and more responsive on the user interface in general than the Switch one, and especially the Wii U. The Wii U's user interface was really cool, really nicely designed, really unique, but very, very, very slow. And uniquely, it actually got worse as time went by. I remember at launch, The Wii U, everybody said, oh yeah, it's a bit, the user interface is a bit clunky and it's a bit slow, but obviously with downloads that's going to improve over time, and they'll add patches and it'll get better. No, they over time they added more functionality, and it got worse and it got slower, and more clunky. As I say, I love the Wii U. I'm not insulting it, but I'm very glad that the Switch 2 is so much more snappy than the Wii U or even the Switch 1. It's much more snappy. So the buttons feel responsive, but once the screen is on and you're in the UI, everything is completely seamless with the moving. It doesn't feel like the system is chugging at all. I know there was some controversy a couple of weeks ago when it was revealed like what percentage of the Switch 2's hardware was reserved at all times for the UI, and developers wouldn't be able to use 100% of the RAM and 100% of the processing power of the CPU and for me, we need the UI to be sleek and to be snappy, and especially I really hope that the eShop is vastly improved, and especially as they want to push the online functions and the game chat and the game sharing and everything else. Yeah, you do need a decent portion of the system reserved, just like your gaming PC needs to have some reserved for Windows or Linux or whatever you use. So. And that's exactly the same with the Steam Deck. It is exactly the same with the Iron Neo. So, people complaining about that really, they were complaining needlessly. But I understand where they're coming from, because given the performance of the Switch 1 with some of the later games, even first-party Nintendo games having frame drops and having difficulty running at decent frame rates on the Switch 1, I can understand that people will be very jittery about wanting to have the absolute best performance out of the Switch 2 for the games, because of course the games are the most important thing. But for me, having a snappy, fast UI that feels responsive and feels like it's going to respond to what you tell it to do, and you press a button and something actually happens, rather than you press a button and you wait 10 seconds and you're not sure whether it even notices that you've pressed a button or not. It's nice, it's snappy, it's very responsive, so I like that. What I don't like is my main problem, probably my number one problem with the Nintendo Switch 2 system out of the box. And for some people, they're going to say, Sam, you are completely over-exaggerating. This isn't a problem. Why does it matter? For me, this is a big issue. It's not an issue for today, but it will be an issue for the future. The Nintendo Switch 2, as I'm sure many of you are aware, it basically needs a day one patch. The first time you turn the system on, you need to connect it to the internet and you need to download a system update. Otherwise, it will not work. So again, imagine you're a child on Christmas Day and you're opening it up, and but your parents are off doing something else. Maybe they're cooking Christmas dinner, whatever. If you don't celebrate Christmas, forgive me, but you can imagine, a similar situation. A child is not going to understand what's going on. Especially a young child, they're going to be excited to play their Mario game or their Pokemon or Animal Crossing or whatever it is that they want to play. Minecraft, Fortnite, I don't know what the kids play nowadays. Old men yelling at clouds. But the first time you turn it on, it's not really a fun, exciting experience in that sense. You're met with a lot of plain text on plain backgrounds, and then you have to connect to the Wi-Fi and then download an update, and that's not going to be something that kids are going to be able to do by themselves. And even if the older kids, or kidults like me, adults who like having that kind of childlike sense of wonder, and that's one of the reasons why I love Nintendo, man. It's just not that. One of the things that I really, really don't like about modern gaming compared to old gaming is the fact that you can buy a brand new game and you can plug it in, and before you even are allowed to play it, you have to wait for an hour while it downloads patches. But you could say, well, that doesn't really matter. This is just literally the first time that it's turned on, and parents can do that for the child before they even give it to the child as a present. Christmas Eve, they can get it out and set up the system and then put it back in the box and then wrap it and then give it to the child, and the child never even knows. Okay, yeah, I understand that it's not a big deal in this issue, but here's where it becomes a big deal. This system is not usable without connecting to the internet. Okay, everybody nowadays does have an internet connection. Everybody has Wi-Fi, and if you don't, why are you buying a Switch 2? You've got bigger priorities of things that you need to sort out. But from a system preservation standpoint, again, I am a retro gamer. I still play my systems that I've either owned or have rebought systems that I had since the 1980s, the 1990s. I still play my NES. I still play my Super Nintendo. I still play my DMG Game Boy. They work perfectly. The Nintendo Switch 2, it needs to connect to the Wi-Fi. And imagine that you have somebody buying a sealed system and they're planning on keeping it to resell in the future, or they just want it for themselves for spares, so they buy two systems, one to use and one to keep as a spare for if the first one breaks. And then years down the line, somebody is opening up this brand new sealed console, and it's essentially a paperweight because it is impossible for them to do anything with. This isn't far-fetched. A lot of people have had that exact experience recently with the Oculus Go headset. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my cat. He's meowing at me. I'm just going to let him out the door. Hi, baby. So yeah, if anybody is interested in VR headsets, you'll probably know the Oculus range of headsets from Meta, or what the company that used to be Facebook. Some people will tell me, no, Oculus was a separate company and the Oculus Rift was nothing to do with Facebook, and then Facebook bought it. And yeah, I know. But so they released a standalone virtual reality headset called the Oculus Go a few years back, and it was a great little system because it was probably the first virtual reality headset for the mainstream, at least, that you could play, and you did not need to be connected to a beefy PC to play games. It literally had the hardware built into the headset itself. Cool little system, just like the Meta Quest 2 and the Meta Quest 3 that you can get now. But the Oculus Go is an older model and it's been discontinued, but you can still buy it now. There are plenty of people picking it up, and if you go on the Oculus Go Reddit, at least 2 or 3 times a week there will be somebody going onto that Reddit thread going, hey, I've just bought a new Oculus Go. I picked it up on Facebook Marketplace, or I picked it up on eBay, or I bought it in CEX or some kind of game store. I just bought this brand new Oculus Go and it doesn't work. And that is basically because in order to make the system work, you have to download an app to your mobile phone and then go through the process of turning the system on, connecting to your mobile phone, connecting to your Wi-Fi through the mobile phone, then going through an onboarding process. And because Meta don't support the Oculus Go anymore, the functionality has slowly disappeared from the app. And it doesn't even warn you that it's not going to work. It just gets partway through the process, says it's going to show you a safety video, and then that video never loads because Meta obviously updated their servers and moved that video to a different location, or deleted the YouTube video or wherever it's streaming that video from. So if you get a factory reset or a brand new sealed Oculus Go, it appears to be fine when you're setting it up, and then it suddenly gets to a part of the system thing where it says, oh, now you have to watch a safety video to tell you about VR, and then it just doesn't work, and you essentially have a bricked system. Now, are there ways to fix it? Yes, absolutely. But you have to essentially be comfortable with, homebrewing or sideloading APKs, and you have to use an Android device. As far as I know, there's no way to do it if you're an Apple user. So basically, for many people who aren't technically minded, the Oculus Go is now essentially a paperweight, even if you buy it brand new. But there are still stores where you can walk into a store and physically buy it, and there are plenty of people selling brand new, old stock, sealed units on Facebook Marketplace and eBay and places like this, and people getting confused that they've just bought what they think is a brand new virtual reality headset that's not really that old, and it simply doesn't work. It's a paperweight, and that is, I fear that's what's going to happen with the Switch 2. Now, of course, people will say to me, but Sam, of course, that's in the future when Nintendo turn off their servers, and it's probably not going to be for at least 10 years. And by that time, everybody will have cracked the system anyway, and there will be homebrew, and there will be... You can sideload pirate apps on there, and you can put emulators on there. Yeah, of course, that's going to happen. But again, not every user is going to be comfortable doing that. And still, you're losing out on that experience of, okay, what is it like to play a stock system, unmodified, exactly how Nintendo intended you to do? I fear that is simply not going to be possible with the Switch 2 in, say, 10 years' time, 20 years' time, whenever the servers don't exist anymore. And for me, that's a real shame, because there are still people to this day unboxing brand new systems that were the systems that they remember from their childhood, whether it's a brand new DMG Game Boy or a Super Nintendo, an NES, or I've even seen, people in their 20s, buying, who are nostalgic for the Wii or for the DS, or going online and buying a brand new sealed Wii and unboxing it and reliving that moment of when they first unboxed that Wii or that DS or whatever their first console was for Christmas or for birthday or whatever. It's a great experience, and that's something that people potentially won't be able to do with the Nintendo Switch 2 in the future. And I understand some people will say, oh, Nintendo have done this on purpose because of leakers and to stop people from getting the system early and from playing it early. And yeah, but it's caused a big problem with people not being able to review the system properly, because traditionally, games journalists at least would have been able to have access to the system for maybe 2 weeks to a month before, so they can really get to grips with the system, really feel like they understand it inside and out, really feel like they can give the definitive reviews on all of these games and really tell the customers, oh yeah, the ins and outs. And that's simply not been possible, because even if you did manage to get hold of the system, as I said, I personally managed to get hold of the system a few days before it's available in shops, but was I able to play any games on it? Heck no, because they locked it. So you have to, before you can play any games, before you can do anything, you have to download this day one update. So yeah, I really was, in this episode, I've been talking about my first impressions, but really that was pretty much all I could do, with the system, having it early. Of course, now that we're on launch day, we can download the patch and everybody can start playing, and everybody's starting on an even playing field. And some people would say, yeah, screw games journalists. This is the modern day. Everybody's got social media. Everybody's an influencer. Everybody can be a journalist nowadays. Yeah, okay, I understand that. And it's fun, in a way, for everybody to be experiencing everything at the same time. So I understand that, but for me, the real problem is the preservation aspect. And I think that's not very foresighted. But do Nintendo care about that? No. Because are Nintendo making any profit, any money from you playing a system 20 years in the future? No, they want you playing, the Nintendo Switch 7 or whatever they're on by that time. So yeah, it's not a big deal. And for the average person buying the console, you're not buying it because you want to leave it sealed and not touch it for 20 years. You're buying it because you want to play it right now, and you want to play the latest Mario Kart game, and you want to play the Zelda Breath of the Wild in a nice upscaled, smoother resolution, and you don't want to mess with emulation, and you want to do it officially. So this is why you're buying your console on day one or whatever. Or maybe you just really, really want that Nintendo Switch Tour, and you don't mind paying the extra money for it. So yeah, that was the end of my first impressions of the console. But by no means is this the end of the review. I have thoughts. Oh baby, do I have thoughts. We're going to talk about the hardware, the specifications. We're going to talk in detail about the control options, about the Joy-Cons. We're going to talk about stick drift. We're going to talk about the Pro Controller. We're going to talk about backwards compatibility. We're going to talk about online functionality. We're going to talk about the price. We're going to talk about the launch lineup. We're going to talk about games now and games in the future. There's so much that we're going to cover. And as I said, this is Daily Nintendo Switch 2, the Daily Switch 2 podcast. So I am going to be uploading videos / podcasts every day to YouTube and Spotify. So be sure to subscribe or follow in whichever way you prefer. It's Linktree / Daily Switch 2. That's linktr.ee/ Daily Switch 2. Thank you so much for listening to my rambling thoughts. I hope you've at least found this interesting. And I really do hope people find this interesting so I can continue to do this. For me, the Nintendo Switch 2 is probably the most important system that Nintendo have ever made for their future. And we'll get into that as the review goes on, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in further videos and episodes as well. But I really do think this is maybe not a make or break for Nintendo, but a very, very important console. And first impressions wise, have they nailed it? Yeah, pretty much. It's not perfect. There's issues, but I think every issue that I've mentioned here has been nitpicky, and is certainly something that could be addressed in the future with a hardware refresh. But any of my downsides that I've mentioned so terrible that they should stop you buying the console? Don't buy the console. Wait. No, not at all. If you want the console, if there's launch games that you want to play, or if you somehow haven't played Breath of the Wild and you really want the best way to play it officially, whatever, if you want to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 and you have the opportunity and you can afford it, absolutely go ahead. This is a quality product. But I really do hope you'll come back and join me for the next videos and the next episodes. Linktree / Daily Switch 2. Thank you very much.